You've seen it, maybe once, maybe many times. That moment, brief but unmistakable, when her eyes turn into something else, not cruel, not loving, something ancient. And you felt yourself slip, not out of control but out of yourself. She didn't need to say a word. Her silence pulled you in, and before you even knew it, your guard, the one you swore would never come down, was already at her feet. That wasn't magic. That wasn't romance. That was nature, a design older than poetry, subtler than manipulation. And Socrates, of all people, saw it. Not through hatred, not through bitterness, but through reason sharpened by suffering. Socrates wasn't a man who blindly followed the rhythm of his desires. He interrogated them. He held them in the fire of truth until the illusions burned away. And what remained was often uncomfortable, especially when it came to the feminine. He noticed something that few men today dare to admit. Women don't merely present beauty. They wield it. Not always consciously, not always maliciously, but strategically. And if you, as a man, walk into that without understanding the rules of the game, you don't lose because she tricked you. You lose because you refuse to see. Why, Socrates might ask, is she drawn to indirect influence rather than confrontation? Why does affection sometimes feel like a weapon wrapped in silk? Why does silence hit harder than shouting? These aren't complaints. They're questions. And if you never ask, you will never know what's happening beneath the surface. In his vision of the just soul, Socrates speaks of internal balance. Reason is at the helm, spirit as its ally, appetite is the servant. But what happens when you invert that? When appetite drives the chariot, when longing for feminine approval becomes your compass, what are you building then? A life? Number? You're building a shrine to confusion, where every decision is filtered through her eyes, not yours. Too many men today wear the costume of reason while living in chains. They say they want a meaningful life, but one glance from her can redirect their entire course. That's not her fault. That's a failure of philosophy, a failure of self-study. See, Socrates never said the woman is the enemy. She's the test, the one that reveals what you have not mastered. Her presence exposes your hunger, your doubt, your unexamined dreams. She doesn't need to try. That's just how nature works. Fire doesn't apologize for being hot. The tide doesn't warn you before it shifts. And she? She doesn't have to explain her instincts. They simply function. She selects, she signals, she adapts, but she does not build you. That is your work. That is your burden. And if you don't carry it, if you drop it at her feet expecting her to sculpt you into a man, she won't pick it up. Not because she's cruel, because she wasn't designed to. Socrates once said, "An unexamined life is not worth living." But even more dangerously, an unexamined desire is a trap that looks like love but feels like dependence. And nowhere is that trap more seductive than with the feminine. She doesn't arrive as temptation. She arrives as salvation. She promises understanding, comfort, warmth. And yet, if you look closely, what she offers is a mirror. The man who stares into that mirror without clarity sees only what he wants to see. He projects, he hopes, he surrenders. And when she eventually turns away, not because she's heartless, but because her instincts detect instability, he is shattered. Not by her, by the illusion he built around her. In Phaedrus, Socrates compares the soul to a winged creature that can either rise toward the divine or fall into obsession. Many men, perhaps most, live circling the same flame, confusing hunger with connection. They don't climb. They don't rise. They remain fixated on the outer form, her beauty, her voice, her validation, without ever understanding the purpose behind the pull. She is not evil. She is efficient. She's not manipulative. She's adaptive. And your obsession with decoding her instead of mastering yourself is where you go wrong. She's not seeking the truth. She's seeking alignment with safety, with strength, with stability. She doesn't want to know your theories. She wants to feel your frame, not your muscles, your presence, your direction, your unshakable root in reality. If you make her your purpose, she will test you. If you build your identity around her affection, she will question it. Not to destroy you, but to see if there's anything real beneath it. Women don't seek to lead men, not truly. They seek to feel that the man can lead himself. If he can't, she fills the void, and that ruins everything. Socrates lived in a world of men addicted to applause, to winning debates, to surface-level honor. He walked away from all that. He chose truth over popularity, clarity over comfort. And this is where his courage still speaks to us. Not in answers, but in his refusal to be moved by anything that wasn't true. You weren't made to orbit her moods. You weren't built to chase her smile. You were born to understand yourself so completely that no external force, not even the deepest longing for her, can shake your foundation. The soul, as Socrates taught, is composed of 3 parts. But when the lowest part, appetite, rules the man, he is no longer a sovereign being. He is a shell waiting to be filled by whoever gives him attention. You see them everywhere. Men whose light flickers unless she lights it. Men who abandon their purpose just to please her preferences. That is not love. That is spiritual dependency. So what does it mean to become untouchable? Not in the sense of distance, but of integrity. It means you no longer react to her emotions as if it's your command. You no longer shape your truth to fit her comfort. You listen, you respect, but you lead. Not because you want control, but because control of yourself is the only thing that makes love possible. You want to be the kind of man who draws her in without trying? Then be the kind of man who doesn't need to be chosen. The kind of man who would still be whole if she walked away. The man who lives by principle, not persuasion. That is where this journey begins. Not with winning her, but with not needing to. That is what Socrates understood. A woman doesn't test your strength with words. She tests it with silence, with indifference, with the subtle retreat that leaves you scrambling to decode what went wrong. That's not random. That's instinct. And Socrates, long before the rise of psychology, understood something profound. Nature always reveals, never explains. He never claimed to define women by one trait or stereotype. Instead, he aimed his gaze inward, at how men responded to the feminine. And what he found is that most men don't think when it comes to women. They react, they chase, they compromise. They abandon the very mission they were meant to serve for the fleeting illusion of affection. Socrates warned not of her curves, her eyes, or her voice, but of your confusion about what they mean to you. A man lost in the fog of his longing is not a man anymore. He's a captive dressed like a suitor. He thinks he's pursuing love, but in truth, he's running from the loneliness inside himself. You were taught to believe she will complete you, that love is the prize, and she is the key. But Socrates would tell you otherwise. If you don't know who you are, if your soul isn't governed by reason, then no woman, not even the kindest, most nurturing one, can help you. Because your emptiness becomes her burden, and she didn't sign up to carry your soul. She doesn't want to mother you. She doesn't want to manage your moods or decode your insecurities. She wants to feel your solidity, not just when things are good, but especially when they're not. She wants to know if you can still lead when she pulls away, that you can still love without losing yourself, that your center isn't dictated by her reaction. But what do most men do? They panic, they grovel, they rewrite their boundaries just to keep her close, and in doing so they show her the one thing she can't unsee, that he is not anchored, that his compass points wherever her mood blows. Socrates, even as he was sentenced to death, did not beg. He did not sway. He stood. Because he knew something most of us forget. Dignity is not a performance. It is posture. It is present. It is the refusal to collapse, even when everything around you invites you to. He taught that power is not in how loudly you speak or how many followers you have. It's in how little you can be moved by things that are not rooted in truth. And affection, especially female affection, is not always rooted in truth. Sometimes it's driven by biology, sometimes by survival, sometimes by confusion. And if you lean on it for identity, you've already lost. She isn't cruel when she pulls away. She's just honest in ways men are rarely prepared for. Her energy shifts when she senses a weakness you refuse to admit to yourself. You think it was a mood. It was a signal. And that signal was not for you to chase her. It was for you to find your backbone. If you lead your life based on how she responds, you are not a leader. You're a satellite, revolving endlessly around something you don't understand. The truth is, she doesn't want to lead you, even if she says she does. What she wants, what she needs, is to feel your direction, your stability, your sovereignty, and not the fake kind built on pretending to be aloof or alpha. Real sovereignty, the kind that doesn't collapse when love is threatened. In Gorgias, Socrates separates pleasure from the good. He warns that just because something feels rewarding doesn't mean it's virtuous. That's what so many men miss. You think her affection proves your worth, that her smile validates your essence. But that's not love. That's a reward system, and you're the dog. She doesn't want a dog. She wants a mountain, something immovable, something that doesn't change shape to make her feel more comfortable. Look around you. Look at the men collapsing under the pressure of not being adored, of not being chosen. They mold themselves into whatever they think she wants and lose themselves in the process. And ironically, the moment they do, she loses interest. Not because she's shallow, but because she's designed to respect strength, not softness disguised as love. Socrates didn't spell this out with modern dating terms, but his warnings were timeless. If you abandon your soul's architecture for the thrill of female attention, you have already forfeited what makes you worthy of love. A man who truly understands the feminine never hates her. He doesn't need to. He studies her like he studies nature, with awe, with curiosity, but also with the humility to know she is not meant to be controlled. She is to be understood, respected, and danced with, only if you are sure-footed enough not to trip over your projections. When she tests your boundaries, it's not because she's toxic. It's because she wants to know, are these boundaries real, or are they performance? Do you love her out of clarity, or fear of being alone? Will you still stand in your truth if she disapproves? Most men crumble. They confuse her challenge with an attack. They take her storm as a reason to retreat. But Socrates wouldn't have retreated. He would have stood calmly, waiting, not to defend his ego, but to observe whether the wind had the power to move a soul grounded in truth. That's what it means to be a philosopher of your instincts, to examine not just your thoughts, but your motives. Why do you want her to love you? What do you think her approval will fix in you? And are you willing to betray your standard to get it? Because if the answer is yes, she'll know. She always knows. And once she sees you would rather be adored than be whole, she begins to pull back. Not because she doesn't care, but because she cannot trust a man who can't trust himself. In Symposium, Socrates speaks of love not as a destination, but as a ladder, each rung a step away from flesh and closer to truth. Most men never climb. They stay fixated on the physical, hoping to find meaning in a body, rather than using that body as a spark to rise toward something higher. Don't be one of them. She is not the kingdom. She is the gate. She is not the finish line. She is the invitation. And whether you pass through that gate as a king or a captive, that is up to you. She's the gate. But what stands on the other side? That's what men forget to ask. They stand in front of her, mesmerized by beauty, by the idea of being chosen, of being seen. But Socrates would have asked a better question. What are you becoming as you stand here? A man or a reflection of her expectations? Modern men are drowning in distractions, scrolls of faces, bodies, filtered laughter, and digital seduction. You think you're choosing her, but you're often just choosing an escape from yourself. Socrates warned us. If desire goes unexamined, it doesn't free you, it enslaves you. So what do you do when you feel that pull, that ache for her affection? You investigate it. You don't shame it. You don't suppress it. You sit with it like a student sits before a riddle. You ask, what do I believe she will give me that I do not give myself? Love? Peace? Proof that you matter? She is not designed to answer those questions. She is designed to reveal that you're still asking them. Socrates wasn't focused on pleasure as the end point. He saw pleasure as a test, one that, when passed, led to higher knowledge. The problem is, most men never pass the first trial. They get caught in her perfume, her warmth, her approval, and they stop climbing. But the ones who climb, they begin to see her not as a goddess to worship, but as a mirror to study. She reflects your inconsistencies, your emotional fragility, your fractured sense of purpose. Not because she wants to hurt you, but because that's what her presence does to a man who hasn't yet become one. And the tragic part? Most men blame her. They say women are confusing, manipulative, and heartless. But Socrates would have seen through that. He would have said, "No, my friend. She simply showed you your lack of structure. That's what women do. Not intentionally, not cruelly, but inevitably. A woman senses what a man hides from himself. You can lie to your friends. You can lie to your coworkers. But her? She'll feel the lie in the way your hand trembles, in the way your eyes hesitate, in the way your voice begs instead of leads. You must understand this. The feminine doesn't respond to need. It responds to presence. She doesn't respect your hunger. She respects your restraint. The world won't tell you this. It'll say, be vulnerable, be open, be soft. And there's truth there, but not the whole truth. Vulnerability without structure is just bleeding, and no woman wants to be your bandage. Socrates lived with unwavering alignment. He didn't bend to please the crowd. He didn't flinch when the verdict came. He drank the hemlock not as a victim, but as a man whose values were not for sale. That's the kind of backbone the feminine feels and finally rests beside. Because here's the paradox. She wants to feel safe, but safety doesn't come from how much you adore her. It comes from how much you've mastered yourself. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you to be consistent, clear, composed, directed. Too many men today confuse niceness with virtue. They think that being agreeable, accommodating, and emotionally available at all times is what earns love. But niceness is often just fear in a tuxedo. The fear of rejection, the fear of not being enough, the fear of standing your ground and losing her. But here's the truth. Socrates would whisper into your ear, if standing in your truth makes her leave, let her leave. Because what's the alternative? You abandon yourself just to keep her near? You build a palace and crown her queen, even when she hasn't proven she can walk beside a king? You'll know these men. You'll see them holding her purse while their mission fades. You'll hear them apologize for boundaries they should have kept. You'll feel the absence of fire in their eyes, the kind of fire that's not aggressive but anchored. And women? They may enjoy the attention, but they won't respect the man. That's the tragedy Socrates hinted at. That the very thing men think will earn love, their surrender, is often what erodes it. She doesn't want a subject. She wants a sovereign. And no, not every woman knows this consciously, but instinctually, it's carved into her bones. She'll test your frame. She'll push your edge. She'll question your calm. Not because she's trying to dominate, but because she's trying to feel safe. And if your center crumbles, she'll know she cannot relax into your presence. It's not a game. It's biology. It's ancient. It's not about who wins. It's about who remains. In the dialogues, Socrates often distinguished appearance and essence, between what seems and what is. Many men seem confident until her silence enters the room. Many men seem composed until she pulls her affection away. Then, like puppets with cut strings, they collapse. You must stop trying to control her. Stop trying to predict her every move. You're not here to contain the ocean. You're here to become the ship that can navigate it. Not because the ocean is wrong, but because you were born to sail, not drown. So, what does that look like? It means when she pulls away, you don't chase. You check your frame. When she questions you, you don't react. You respond. When she threatens to leave, you don't beg. You bless her path and return to yours. This isn't coldness. It's clarity. And when a woman feels that from a man, not as an act, not as a tactic, but as a truth, she softens. Not out of submission, but out of reverence. Socrates never said, be dominant. He said, know thyself. Because a man who knows himself cannot be dominated, not by a woman, not by approval, not even by his cravings. He becomes something else entirely. Socrates said, the shortest and surest way to live with honor in the world is to be in reality what we would appear to be. So ask yourself, what do you appear to be? Strong, grounded, purposeful? Do you live that? Or is it just a mask you wear until the storm comes? Until her voice rises? Until she threatens to walk away? Most men do not break from physical pain, but from emotional disorientation. They fold not because they're weak, but because they've built no internal map for when desire becomes disapproval. They chase her warmth like addicts chase fire, never realizing that the true heat they need is the fire of identity, purpose, sovereignty. Women test not because they hate men, but because they need to know if the man standing in front of them is made of wood or steel, of echoes or essence, of posture or presence. She'll never say this out loud. Nature doesn't speak in language. It speaks in instinct. But if she senses you bend to earn her approval, she'll stop believing you can carry her weight. And how does she test? With her absence, with a raised eyebrow, with silence after a joke, with the withholding of affection not out of cruelty but calibration. She wants to feel your center, your non-reactivity, your stillness, your truth. She doesn't want a man who shouts his strength. She wants a man whose strength is so stable, it speaks before his mouth ever opens. This is what Socrates lived. Not dominance, not submission, but unshakable self-command. He didn't chase applause, though he had the wisdom to earn it. He didn't argue for dominance, though he crushed illusions wherever they hid. He didn't beg the Athenian court for his life. He simply stood, unmoved, because what he stood for mattered more than the outcome. That's what women want from you. Not that you agree with them, not that you predict their moods, not that you make them your purpose, but you have a purpose. And that your relationship with her is born of overflow, not starvation. She is not the meal, she is the dessert. And here is a truth the world won't tell you. If she feels you are more invested in her mood than your mission, she will not trust you. Because it signals that your direction is fragile, that it bends when stroked, breaks when tested, and vanishes when challenged. You don't have to yell. You don't have to threaten. You don't have to play games. You just have to be still. Still in your direction. Still in your values. Still in your love. Not as dependency, but as a gift. Freely given. Freely walk away from it if it's not respected. When she sees that level of internal peace, something changes. The tests are slow, the chaos softens. Not because she has surrendered to you, but because she finally sees there is no need to lead. You've got it. You've always had it. She just needed to feel that before she could follow. This is the essence of masculine virtue. Not being bulletproof, but being honest. Not being perfect, but being unbending in what truly matters. Not needing her to complete you, but inviting her to join you. Women don't align with men who orbit them. They align with men who orbit truth. That's the paradox. The more you chase her, the more she runs. The more you root into yourself, the more she leans in, not out of submission, but because you've become a gravity she wants to follow. Socrates never gave us rules. He gave us mirrors, questions, trials. He gave us silence, and in that silence, a voice clearer than any philosopher who came after him. He never asked us to hate the feminine. He asked us to understand it, to ask, what is she? Not just what she looks like. What drives her? What moves her? What does her affection mean? What does her withdrawal signal? But most importantly, he turned our attention inward. Why do you need her gaze to feel alive? Why do you abandon your path when her affection fades? Why does her rejection feel like annihilation? Because you've mistaken her presence for your identity. And that is the one thing she cannot respect. She can respect your ambition, your silence, your laughter, even your pain. But she cannot respect the man who makes her the sun and orbits her every flicker. You are not her moon. You are not her reflection. You are not her child. You are the master. She is the wind. And if you forget that, she will remind you, not with malice, but with motion. So what do you do now? You rise. You stop folding. You stop blaming her for your lack of backbone. You build. You study. You understand that being unshaken is not about detachment. It's about discernment. It's not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. You want to know the kind of man a woman cannot leave? It's not the richest. It's not the most poetic. It's not the most emotionally fluent. It's the man who can walk away with his soul intact. The man who stands in silence while others beg for validation. The man who holds his line not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. The man who doesn't need to be adored to feel complete, Because when she senses that your love is not chained to her approval, that your light is not switched off when she's gone, that's when she feels something ancient. Not fear, not confusion, but awe. You want her to stay? Then be the man who would be at peace even if she doesn't. Be the man whose path is too important to abandon for a whisper of pleasure. Be the man Socrates would have nodded to across a room and said, "That one, he has examined his life." And if you become that, if you dare to stare down every illusion, every addiction, every false story you've built around love, then you will not only have love, you will have respect. From her, from yourself, from the world. That is the gift of philosophy. That is the power of clarity. And that is the man she prays you never become. Because when you do, when you rise not against her, but beyond your dependence on her, then the game is over. You've already won.